In an extraordinary interview tonight, Prince Harry has spoken candidly about the breakdown of his relationship with his father and other members of the royal family. He says his father doesn't speak to him, but added he would love a reconciliation.
It looks like the door to reconciliation between Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, King Charles, Prince William, and the wider royal family may be getting harder to open. For months, there has been speculation that Harry and his father could eventually put their differences aside. There have been reports of conversations, quiet attempts at reconciliation, and hopes that the family could somehow find a way back to normal. But according to claims circulating around the royal, the patience inside the palace may be wearing extremely thin. And the message being attributed to King Charles is brutal. "I am done with them." Not necessarily because the king doesn't love his son, but because, according to these claims, he may feel that the relationship has become one-sided, with the royal family's name and connections repeatedly becoming part of Harry and Meghan's public life.
The prince gave an exclusive interview to the BBC hours after he lost his legal challenge about the level of security he receives when he's in the UK. His protection, funded by the taxpayer, was downgraded in 2020.
The biggest issue, according to the allegations, is trust. And once trust disappears inside a family, reconciliation becomes much harder. Harry and Meghan have spent years building a life away from the institution they once represented. They stepped back from royal duties, moved to North America, signed major commercial deals, gave interviews, released documentaries, and publicly discussed their experiences inside the royal family. That history hasn't simply disappeared. Every time reconciliation is mentioned, the same question comes back. Would Harry apologize? Would Meghan apologize? Would the royal family apologize? Would everyone agree to stop discussing the past publicly? Or would reconciliation simply mean Harry and Meghan getting closer to the royal family while continuing to benefit from the royal connection? That appears to be where the latest claims become particularly explosive. According to the allegations, a recent attempt at reconciliation supposedly ran into a serious problem because the two sides weren't looking for the same thing. One side allegedly wanted accountability and an acknowledgement of the damage caused. The other side, according to the claims, was supposedly interested in rebuilding the relationship without making the kind of apology the family wanted. And that's where everything reportedly started falling apart. Because if one person says, "Let's start again," while the other says, "Before we start again, we need to deal with what happened," you're not really starting again. You're reopening the argument. And this is reportedly why King Charles is becoming increasingly frustrated. The king has his responsibilities, his position, and an entire institution surrounding him. He can't simply behave like an ordinary father who can close the door, have a private argument with his son, and forget everything that happened. Every meeting has consequences. But there's another person who reportedly has even less appetite for another round of family drama. Prince William. Harry and William were once brothers who appeared inseparable. They grew up together under extraordinary circumstances. They experienced the loss of their mother, Princess Diana, together. They served in the military. They supported each other publicly. For years, people assumed that whatever happened, the brothers would eventually find their way back to one another. But that relationship has changed dramatically. The accusations, interviews, public statements, and revelations surrounding the royal family have created wounds that can't simply be erased because somebody wants a family reunion. And according to the latest claims, William may have reached a point where he doesn't want to keep participating in the same cycle. A reconciliation happens. Hope rises. Then another disagreement appears. Then another story emerges. Then another public statement. Then another wave of speculation. And eventually, everybody ends up back where they started. That is reportedly what the royal side doesn't want anymore. They want stability. They want privacy. And most importantly, they want to know that anything discussed privately will actually remain private. That last part matters. Because Harry has previously spoken publicly about extremely personal family matters. His memoir and interviews brought private royal tensions into the public arena on an unprecedented scale. So from the perspective of someone inside the royal family, the question isn't simply, do we forgive Harry? It's also, can we trust him again? And that's a much harder question. Now, the money issue makes the story even more complicated. Claims have circulated suggesting that Harry and Meghan want to remain connected to the royal family while also maintaining their independent commercial life. But the idea that they are simply looking for royal money is an allegation, not an established fact. There is no reason to present that claim as proven. Still, it is precisely the kind of accusation that fuels the anger surrounding this story. Critics ask why Harry and Meghan would want reconciliation if they are still determined to maintain their distance from royal duties. Supporters of Harry and Meghan would argue that reconciliation isn't necessarily about returning to royal life. It could simply mean repairing a broken family relationship. And that distinction is important. You can forgive someone without bringing them back into your institution. You can love your son without agreeing with his decisions. You can reconcile privately without restoring the relationship to what it was before. That may ultimately be the only form of reconciliation available to this family. Because the old arrangement is gone. Harry is no longer the young prince living inside the palace. Meghan is no longer simply a new member of the royal family. William is now preparing for the future role that will eventually come with the crown. Charles is the king. And the family has changed permanently. So when people hear the phrase, "I am done with them," they shouldn't automatically interpret it as King Charles literally declaring that he has stopped loving his son. It could mean something much more complicated. He may be done with the drama, done with negotiations, done with repeated attempts that don't lead anywhere, done with the uncertainty, done with wondering what might become public next, and, according to the latest claims, done with feeling that every attempt to repair the relationship somehow creates another problem. That's why the alleged reconciliation failure is so significant. If Harry and Meghan genuinely want peace with the royal family, the biggest question isn't whether they can get another meeting with King Charles. It's whether both sides are prepared to make uncomfortable concessions. Because reconciliation cannot be built on demands from only one side. It requires accountability. It requires forgiveness. It requires boundaries. And most importantly, it requires trust. Without those things, a meeting is just a meeting. A handshake is just a handshake. And a family photograph doesn't mean the family has healed. For Harry and Meghan, the challenge may now be proving that they want a relationship with the family itself, rather than simply maintaining a relationship with the royal name. For King Charles and Prince William, the challenge is equally difficult. They have to decide whether they can forgive without allowing old wounds to control the future. And that is why this story isn't really about one failed reconciliation. It's about whether this family has reached the point where forgiveness is still possible, but the relationship can never return to what it once was. Maybe King Charles isn't saying, "I don't love my son." Maybe the real message is much colder. "I won't keep playing this game." And if that is genuinely the position inside the royal family, then Harry and Meghan may have reached a very uncomfortable crossroads. Because reconciliation can only happen when both sides want the same thing. And if one side wants forgiveness while the other wants accountability, the meeting may end before it even begins. The royal family has been through years of conflict, and whatever happens next, the relationship between Harry, Meghan, Charles, and William is unlikely to be repaired by another carefully staged public appearance. If reconciliation is ever going to happen, it will probably require something far more difficult. Silence, honesty, accountability, and a willingness from everyone involved to finally stop fighting over who gets the last word. Because sometimes the hardest thing for a family isn't walking away. It's deciding whether they are willing to sit down one more time and tell the truth to each other.
The story between Prince Harry and his family didn't fall apart overnight. It began with Harry and Meghan stepping back from royal duties in 2020 and moving to the United States. What followed was years of public interviews, the Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, and Harry's memoir, Spare, where Harry spoke openly about his disagreements with members of the royal family.